Hey crafty people! Welcome back to my channel, and in case you're new here, I'm Sarah, also known as Craft Nerd because I'm a nerd who loves to craft. I do paper crafting, card making, junk journaling, and mixed media art. Let's get crafting! Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you 5-6 ways of altering your Tim Holtz Ideology Salvaged Figures, and this is the large salvaged figures, and then these are the small salvaged reindeer. I also have some large salvaged reindeer. I am going to be doing some stuff with a large salvaged snowman. I don't think I have any of the smaller salvaged figures that I'm doing anything in this video, but I'm going to show you several ways I like to use to alter them. So the first one is painting them. Now, here are my tips for painting the salvaged figures. Number one, I find going straight to paint on these guys is a pain in the patootie. Now, I know several of the Tim Holtz makers, I've seen them paint them more. They just, I think, go straight in with the paint. It gives me fits every time I try paint. The first few times I tried painting these guys using just straight paint onto them. So I like to give them a coat of white gesso. So any old white gesso you got is fine. I got a big old tub of it, and I'm not too particular about it. I just try and get coverage over. I'm not all that worried about brush strokes. It's just my base coat, because I find I don't have to put as many layers of paint on if I start out by giving them a coat of gesso. So yeah, just give them a good coat and let them dry. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I'm going to set him aside to dry. While he's drying, we are going to move on to this guy. Now, this one I've already given a base coat of, and because I'm going to be putting something on top, I wasn't all that particular about it. I just gave it a base coat of purple. Now, this deer is for my TV room, which every other year I do lavender and purple and green ornaments on the tree and decor, so that's why he's purple. And I have flock. I've had this stuff forever, and we are just going to give him a coating of flock. And so I'm going to grab, I think I'm going to go with collage medium and a brush to apply it. And I'm going to grab a scrap piece of paper that we can shake our flock onto, and then put it back in the jar. I think maybe I should grab a fresh one since this one was used with glitter, and so I don't want glitter in my flock. So let's grab another scrap piece of paper. All right, so let's grab a brush. I'm gonna just damp it a little to get the bristles together. Actually, do I want to use that one, or do I want to use... Yeah, we'll go ahead and use this guy. I'm gonna take some collage medium and paint it on him. And now I'm gonna set my paintbrush aside for a minute and pour out a whole bunch of flock. Tap off the excess. And let me show you up close so you can see what the difference is. Don't know how well it's showing up that it is now fuzzy. And if you miss spots, you can always go back in once it's dry and add another layer. It's actually doing pretty good. Just gonna carry on and cover him up completely. And the reason I painted him was this way: if I did miss a spot, you wouldn't see stark white showing. I'm going to try and get as much of him done on the first go as possible, but there's definitely going to be, I'm going to need to let him dry to like finish off, because I need to hold him. And if I had been thinking, I would have used the red line tape to tape him to like a popsicle stick so that I could do the whole thing. Okay, I think I'm gonna set him aside, let him dry completely, and then come back in and finish him off. And if there's any spots I think could use a little bit more, I'll add a little extra to them. So we're gonna set him aside for a little while. I'm gonna go clean off my brush, because you do not want to leave collage medium on your brush to dry, or it will glue your bristles together. And then I will come back and we will move on to our next guy. Okay. So the next idea, I'm going to warn you now, it's very labor intensive. It's going to take you a while. I've done it before on the Tim Holtz Salvaged Rabbits, and I will leave a link to that video down below. But we are basically going to add fur to our reindeer. I'm going to start with some white yarn, because I want to do the underside of his tail white. And handy little tool, it is a flea comb. Now, I have never used this on my dogs. I got it came like in a pack with the brush that I wanted for them. So it has become a craft supply. But we're gonna brush out our yarn so we get it separated into nice little threads there. Then we are gonna come in and we are gonna grab a little bit of glue. Let's use some collage medium. And I'm gonna put some glue on his tail. There's more glue than I need, so I'm gonna come in and wipe a bit of that off. Now I'm gonna grab tweezers and scissors. I'm gonna grab a hold of some of my loose threads. Let's see, should I move you in? That might make this a little easier for you to see. All right. I'm gonna snip those guys off. And glue them on. And let me grab a little silicone tool to tap them into our glue. Now, as you can hopefully see, they're way longer than what I want them to be, but I'm gonna wait until he's completely dry to trim anything off. So I'm gonna set my white yarn aside. And I couldn't find any brown yarn, at least not that wasn't ridiculous price-wise for doing, for the amount of yarn I needed for this project. So I took some of that white yarn and dyed it using a little bit of Vintage Photo Distress Spray Stain and some water in a cup, and just soaked it in for a little bit and then pulled it out and dried it. So this is going to be what we use for our brown. And I'm going to go through and bunch that up a little closer together. And again, we're going to add a little bit of glue. Kind of think I should grab a paintbrush, spread it out with a paintbrush. And then that is not working so great. Sticking to the tweezers. All right, let's don't think much of that ended up on there. All right, let's try again. And I'm just gonna hold it with my fingers this time. And I'm gonna cut it shorter. I think it's part of the problem is I'm cutting them too long of pieces. So as you can see, yes, labor intensive, because we are gonna cover this whole thing with little strips of brushed out yarn and then give it a haircut. So yeah, that's the basic process is brush, add some glue, cut a piece off, glue it on, keep going. So just gonna cut a little hank off, come over, plop it down in place. Use my silicone spatula. You know what? I'm gonna go back to my thing of collage medium in the tub since working with the paintbrush seems to be working a little easier. Do one more on camera and then I'm gonna off camera cover this whole guy up except the antlers. I'm gonna leave the antlers undone. Because yeah, this is gonna take me a while to do. So as I said, not necessarily for everybody, but I really like the results. I loved how my fuzzy bunnies came out when I did these with the salvaged rabbits. So I've been planning for ages to do it to one of the reindeer, so. All right, I'm just gonna keep on covering him and I will be back when he's done. Actually, no, I'll probably come back and do something else for this video and then keep working on this because yeah, it's gonna take me a very long time to glue all of the fluff on here. Not quite as long as the rabbit because like I said, I think these guys are smaller than the rabbits that I did. But yeah, that's the basic process for gluing on. So I'm going to continue with that and I'll be back. Okay, so I finished covering him and yes, he's a little woolly, but he's going to need a little bit more time to make sure he's completely dry. And all told, it took me about an hour to completely cover him. So we'll give him a haircut in a little bit. Our Wooden Soldier's gesso coat is completely dry. So tip number 2 for painting these guys is make sure you're using the right size brush, which I know seems kind of obvious, but if you use a really big brush for things like his mustache and hands, you're just going to end up getting paint everywhere and it's going to frustrate you. So make sure you've got a nice detailed brush for the detailed bits. My next tip is to start with your lighter colors first. This way, if you do color outside the lines a little bit, those are going to be easier to cover up than if you start with the dark colors and accidentally get them on where the light colors are. So I'm going to start by doing his face, which I've got this gloopy neutral beige that I'm going to use that is not a happy paint, but it's the only color I've got that works for his skin tone. And I'm not going to paint all of this on camera. I'm just going to show you what I mean, because if we go outside the lines a little bit, covering that up with the red is going to be easier. My next tip is be prepared to do at least 2 coats of paint. if you want to get good coverage. So by using a smaller brush, I did not get it all over the place. I kept it mostly to where I wanted the paint to go. Now with the face, because the rest of the details are going to be dark, I'm not too worried, you know, like the mustache, I'm not too worried, and his hair, if I don't do a good job of staying in the lines when I paint this. Next tip is, if I'm going to paint something gold, I usually like to do a base coat in yellow first, because gold paints tend to be a little bit more translucent. And I am going to give some gold accents on his hat, so I'll go ahead and kind of sketch them in yellow. I'm also going to give him gold epaulets, so I'm kind of going to where that bend is on him. Now you may notice I did get a little carried away with the yellow and got it over here where red's gonna go, but red is a darker color than the yellow, so it will have an easier time covering it than if I got red on the yellow areas. So we're gonna let the yellow dry. I stuck my finger in it. And let's do his pants. I should be able to avoid getting my fingers in the yellow while I do that. Now for this, I'm going to use a bigger brush because his boots are going to be black. So any blue I get on there, not a big deal, will get covered up by the black. And I'm not too worried about getting it up on the bottom of his jacket, which I'm going to be painting red, because he'll be standing upright. You won't really see that area, so it's not that big of a deal. So that's my next tip. Make things easy on yourself and don't worry about spots that nobody's going to see. At least don't worry about getting them perfect. Oh, I forgot to do that piece in yellow. Since it's a slightly bigger area, I'm gonna stick with my slightly bigger brush and just give that a quick coat. All right, I'm gonna set him aside, let him dry, and we are gonna move on to something. Okay, so sorry about the glare. I've got my glass mat out because I'm planning on doing some techniques using alcohol ink. And so these guys, I gave a coat of spray paint to using Rust-Oleum's matte black primer. And now I'm gonna grab my sanding disc and give them a little sanding. Rough them up a little bit. Honestly, that works much better than having it on the sanding tool. Do the same for the other one. Let's clean up this. All right, and now I'm gonna add some mushroom alcohol ink to them and see what happens, because yeah, this one we're kind of experimenting on. Let me grab a little sponge thingy. I have a feeling it may not exactly turn out how I had envisioned. Mostly because I'm thinking this might be a little darker than what I want for this piece. Before I started playing around, or for the piece it's gonna go on, I looked at some of the, Tim Holtz makers and got some ideas from them. Now the mushrooms just kind of changing the color of the spots where we sanded off, but don't know that I want them black now that I've spray painted them black. Let's see, what can we possibly do? I'm wondering, doing some alloy and Statute and then adding some mushroom. Let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, that's getting way too much gold going on. Alright, I think where's what I want? Oh, it's right here. Let's use a little rubbing alcohol, see if we can get some of that to move around a little bit better. All right, let's now try adding some mushroom over top. Okay, I'm gonna say I am liking how these look, but I don't know if they're gonna work for the piece I have them in mind for. I might have to save them for something else. Because yeah, I kind of like how that looks. All right, let's do the same steps on this one. I did that already. We need to do some alloy. Yeah, so there we've got those two guys. I like how they look, but again, I'm not 100% sure they're gonna work. We'll see when I get to, oh, let's get there. It's good. It's a good idea to turn your piece around periodically and check and make sure you're getting all of the various angles. I'm gonna set those guys aside for a minute. I'm gonna clean myself up because yeah, now I'm a mess, and I'll be back. All right, next are these two little guys, and you'll notice this deer is missing their antlers. What I did, and I did it off camera because I wasn't sure if it was gonna work, and I didn't want to be crying on camera if I broke one of my reindeer. I took my heavy duty wire cutters, kind of went in and snipped a little on the reindeer antler, and then I was able to kind of just press on it and snap it off. So I've got the antlers over here. So I was very happy I was able to get them off. And then I just took an emery board and filed down the rough spot on the top of her head. Now for these guys, I'm going to use that combo I did in my last video for coloring the baubles, because these guys are going to go in the same piece. So I'm going to add some Alloy and Foundry, some Turquoise and Mermaid alcohol ink, dot of the blending solution, and then I'm going to use, I think, a paintbrush to apply this so I don't get my fingers quite as messy. Leave him dry for a sec and work on this one. Although, fun fact, if these are reindeer, I had a book called The Physics of Christmas. Male reindeer shed their antlers in the winter, so by the time Christmas rolls around, they wouldn't have antlers, but the female reindeer would. So, technically speaking, Santa's reindeers are all female. It's the only bit I remember from that book. But I thought that was an interesting fact, is that, you know, we assume popular culture-wise, you look at a reindeer with antlers and a reindeer without, and you assume the reindeer without's female and the one with is male, and that is not in fact the case. All right, I'm gonna leave them to dry fully for a sec before I show them up close to you. And I'm just gonna use a paper towel and some rubbing alcohol to clean off my brush real well. And I missed a spot. Dagnabbit. Oh man, I missed a couple spots. Went to all that trouble cleaning off the brush. And I gotta go back in. All right, I'm gonna clean this off camera and I'll be back. All right, so I've got this snowman that I painted and I wanna kind of grunge him up a bit. Actually wanna add a little, so we're gonna use a little mushroom. Ooh, that's a lot of mushroom. Too much mushroom. Too much mushroom. Oh, this is, yeah, too much mushroom, and my gessoed paint does not like the alcohol ink or the rubbing alcohol, one or the other. Oh no. Okay, we're gonna just call him a failure. All right, that did not go well. I'm gonna leave that alone and see if there's some way I can save him. But right now, I don't know that there will be. Yeah, that got overboard with the mushroom, and my paint did not care for the alcohol. at all. I may be able to completely wipe him clean and start over with him. Because yeah, some of it's coming off. But yeah, like that was, oh, all right, epic fail. I'm gonna go have a clean up and I'll be back. Okay, not really sure why that happened, but upside, well, hand sanitizer, and I was able to take him back to basically brand new. So I'm just gonna have to repaint him, and there is another way to age them that I will show you in a bit. Okay, so my last two painting tips are when you're doing your final touch-ups and you're obsessing about perceived imperfections in your paint job, what I want you to do is take the piece and hold it out at arm's length and see if you can still see the imperfection. Because if you can't, then you don't need to worry about it. Because it's unlikely anyone's going to be looking that closely at the project when you put it on your project. And finally, if you've got imperfections that are just bugging you, grunge the piece up, and then any imperfection looks like it's an intentional part of the aesthetic instead of a mistake. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done a second coat on the blue, the yellow, and his green face. And I've started it on the red, and I wanted to show you this tip when you're getting into spots where the red's meeting lighter colors and you want to be careful not to get red where you don't want it. I'm going to dip my paint or my brush in the paint, and then I'm going to take it and wipe it off against the side of the paint bottle. And what that does is you now have paint loaded on one side of the brush, but not so much on the other. So when I go in, if I'm putting the paint down towards the figure, I'm less likely to get paint where I don't want it along the side that does not have the paint on it. That makes sense? So if I wipe it off, I take that side which has all the paint loaded on it and put it down to the piece, and I'm not going to have the paint accidentally go where I don't want it. I just went all over the place over here and covered up his belt completely, which is not going to be a problem because we're going to paint that black, so that will cover up the red, no problem. Now, next tip is instead of trying to paint inside his eyes and inside the buttons with a paintbrush, I'm going to take a toothpick could also use the back of the paintbrush handle much easier than trying to do that with a paintbrush. Okay, I'm gonna let him finish drying and probably just go ahead and do the black paint and the second coat of red and all of that, and then I'll come back. All right, so I'm gonna set that aside, let it dry, and probably finish painting it off camera. I already have one that I finished painting because the piece I'm planning on using it in has is going to have 2 of them. And I want to do a couple other things to it. First, I was originally thinking of doing gold paint for the epaulettes, but now I'm thinking maybe I want to try doing Foundry Wax. Just making sure I'm giving it a good shake. Put some out on my mat, and not too much because once it dries, it like flakes up. That's all dried out. Let's put a little fresh dollop down. Because once it's dry, it is dry, it is dead. You can't reconstitute it, don't even try. Just get some more. Because, yeah, watch. It just becomes powdery and waxy and wipes away. So we'll be able to just wipe it off our brush. No problem. I'm just waiting a sec because I got a little bit of it in the buttonhole. And so I'm going to kind of push it out. Now, for it to become permanent, you must heat set it. I touch it now, I will just rub it off. So, I'm gonna grab my heat tool and heat set it. Alright, I missed a few spots on the front piece, so I'm gonna go in and just touch those up. All right, so that's now on and permanent, and I like that. May go back in. I lost some of the black on the inside of the buttons, and just do a quick touch up. Now, I do want to do one more thing. I want to grungy this guy up a little bit, and we're not touching alcohol inks this time. I'm going to grab some distress crayons. Got some Pumice Stone. Let's use some Walnut Stain. Maybe a little black soot. And I am going to grab Picket Fence. We're just going to play around a little bit. I'm going to grab brush, and we're going to start with a little Walnut Stain. As tends to happen with me and Distress Crayon, we do not get along very well often. Let's see, I'm gonna put a little water in a dish and use my finger to try and get that to move around a little bit. I think there's some white on this brush. that's not going to do anything down there. But the pumice stone, I'll add a little of the crayon in because once, or the walnut stain, because once we start mixing with the pumice stone, you might see some of it. That was a little too wet. I was trying to just make sure I got it in spots where my finger couldn't quite fit. I wonder if, let's see. Let's try to toss in a little antique linen on the hat. I think I'm gonna grab a sanding disc and just do a little bit of gentle sanding in a few spots. And then I may come back with some crayon. I need to come in with like a paintbrush over here because you can see the pure bright red. All right, I kind of like him. I think I'm gonna call him done. Oh, we've got one more thing to do. Let's do that. Let him dry a little bit more. And let's give our furry little deer a haircut. I'm just gonna come in and shorten all the flyaways so that we can see our deer again. And if need be, I can go back in and add more. Okay, let's see. I definitely missed a few spots, so I'm gonna need to go back in. Okay, so I've got a few spots that I want to go back in, especially along here that need to be filled in, and I missed a spot on his ear, and like back legs back here. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back and show you what he looks like. And then what we'll do is add some paint for his eyes and on his hooves, so that stands out and it looks a little bit more natural. So yeah, I am going to fill in the empty spots and then I'll be back. Okay, so I added some more of the yarn to him and gave him a little bit of a haircut, and I think I'm going to call him almost done. There are a couple things we're going to do. And I think it would have worked better if I hadn't had to dye the yarn, because I think the blotchiness is kind of from the distress ink reacting with the liquid glue. All right, we're going to give him eyeballs. Oh, that's going to need to get trimmed out because apparently there was a hair that was a little too long there. And we're going to paint the hooves. Definitely have a few loose hairs that are going to get trimmed off once the paint is dry. But there we go. We've got our fuzzy reindeer. Okay, so I salvaged my snowman. I repainted him. The paint was a little less happy going on after removing it with alcohol, rubbing alcohol. But I did manage to repaint him, and this turned out to be a happy accident because I wasn't thrilled with the paint colors I chose for the mittens and the scarf, and so I got to paint him in new colors. Now I want to glitter him, so I am going to use Distress Resist spray, and I am going to actually spray it mostly because I also distressed him with crayon, and if I put on a liquid glue with a brush, it's going to move around the crayon. So I figured let's try giving him a spritz with spray. And we're going to move that out of the way. Grab over this. And I'm going chunky. Although I probably shouldn't have touched him with dirty fingers because I think he's got a dirty fingerprint on him now. Ooh, I like how he looks covered in chunky glitter. I think I may want to leave him sit for a little while to dry completely before I do the rest of him. I'm torn because I don't want to have to clean out the Distress Resist sprayer. You know what? We're gonna go for it and see if we can get him all done. Just trying to make sure I got it everywhere. I am gonna grab a brush and try and get a couple spots that I missed. All right, I'm gonna have a bit of a cleanup and then I'm gonna show you everything we got done today. Okay, so today we did 5 and 2 half ideas, plus I have a bonus one. So we'll start with this guy who we flocked, and I did do a base coat in purple so that if anywhere the flock didn't stick, it would not look white. So that's using flock. Then we did our fuzzy reindeer that we used brushed yarn to add the fur to. Then we did our reindeer with alcohol ink and alcohol alloy to get kind of a shiny metallic look to them. You could also use Distress Foundry Wax, which we did use on these guys, and I think I used 2 different colors on them. Well, dang nabbit. Oh, these guys ended up, I spray painted them black and roughed them up with some sandpaper, but it wasn't, and then added some alcohol ink and mushroom, but it wasn't quite the look I was going for. So I pulled out the alcohol ink alloy and went over them with that, but didn't do like a full coating of it, and then added more mushroom alcohol ink on top to get kind of a tarnished, brassy kind of look to them as opposed to our clean, shiny guys. Then idea 5 is to paint your figurines, and I gave you some tips for what I do for painting them. And then after I painted them, here's one of the halves. I grunged them up using Distress Crayon. And then for this guy, in addition to grunging him up, here's our second half idea. I added glitter on top. And then our bonus one is, I for some reason I decided after the epic fail that this started out as, to just try putting some mushroom alcohol ink on a snowman. And this is literally just mushroom alcohol ink and a little rubbing alcohol to get it to move around. And look at all the cool colors that came out, like the blues that are in the mushroom ink. I have no idea what I'm going to use this guy on, but I really like how he came out. I think he's really kind of cool. So, there you have it. 6 2.5 ideas. Right, let's pull this out. For altering your salvaged figures. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please do all the things that lets YouTube know you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave me a comment down below. Thanks for joining me, and happy crafting!